Right.
And it sounds paranoid, but actually when I lived in Michigan, I remember driving home from work and there was a Black Hawk helicopter from the sheriff. Somebody like armed a gas station, all that. Let's get this party started.
So I don't know what happened.
Projects, I think.
There was a meeting last week.
I think
What's
so.
the, what are you thinking?
I just said I'll go on.
So, I always
no
do
one
adaptive reviews, so I'm gonna have
Pretty.
the short project,
All right, we're gonna get this party started. You guys ready?
work on the art center.
Yeah, I'm ready.
The art center.
All right, I will call tonight's planning commission meeting to order, and I will accept an approval of the agenda.
I move to approve the agenda.
All right, Vice Chair Rosenberg, do I have a second?
Second.
All right, Ms. Webster, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Seeing none, it passes. So, we do, the first meeting of the calendar year, we do annual election of officers and commission appointments. I'm happy to do a recess and we can go talk, but if anybody, Mr. Arbuckle had said he was fine on the committee he was on. Everybody else, as far as I know, is okay. Does
Yes.
anybody want to be chair?
No.
All right, wow, that was quick. So we'll save the adjourning. I'll accept the motion. I think how we've done it in the past is a motion to, continuation motion, so to continue 26 as 25 was. So I'll entertain that motion.
I move to do
Vice-
so.
Vice Chair Rosenberg.
Second.
All right, Mr. Kruth. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? Seeing none, we are status quo for those purposes. All right, approval of the minutes from November 11th. Wow, yeah, it's been a minute. Are there any additions, changes, corrections to the minutes? All right, I will accept the motion. I'm sure Vice Chair Rosenberg wants to go for the hat trick.
Sure. I move to approve the minutes.
All right, so we have a motion. Do I have a second? It's your turn.
Second.
Mr. Kruth with the second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? Seeing none. All right. At this point, we will entertain comments from the public related to items that are not on tonight's agenda. So if you'd like to chat with us about anything that is not on the agenda, feel free to step up, identify yourself and your address. There's nobody of the 6 people moving for our friends at home, so we're gonna take that as a sign. We can move on to reports, commissions, reports from commissions, boards, committees, and staff. Mr. Bracken, you get to go last.
Thank you.
I knew if I said you went first, you were gonna tell me to go over to Mr. Kruth.
Nothing to report from CIC.
I was gonna say there's probably not a lot for any of us to report.
Yeah, I have nothing to report, but the Environmental Action Committee, or whatever it's called, is meeting this week, so there'll be a report next month.
Perfect.
I will have a report for housing next month.
And I believe you're climate action, right, and I'm environmental?
Yes.
The big news environmental is we're moving forward with the wastewater treatment plant solar, and I'm super excited about it.
HAPC has a meeting tomorrow. Very long story short, it's a pre-application, right? A pre-application to revisit something that was approved previously. So it'd be the demolition of the Follett's bookstore at the corner of Poplar and High, and basically replace it with a 4-story, as I lovingly call it, Chipotle-esque corner building. There's a lot of variations, but again, it's just a pre-application, so there's a lot of steps and more to report, but oversimplified, it's revisiting what we've already approved. You guys good? All right, so staff?
Yes, thank you. Since Mr. Arbuckle is not here, I'll mention from Parking and Transportation Advisory Board, there was a recommendation that they forwarded to council on the bike and pedestrian master plan that's been in progress for several months now. And council did approve that, so thank you. And that allows the consultant to move forward on the schematic design and cost estimations for those widened sidewalks around the mile square. There's 4 main corridors for that. Locust Street was recommended to be a separate study because of just the complexities that it has and how much bigger of a scope that would be. And if you remember, this is the project that's being funded through FTA, Federal Transit, the partnership with BCRTA. So that project is about 2/3 of the way done. It'll come back to council in April with the cost estimations for those 4 corridors, kind of around through and around the mile square. So that'll kind of, if the city decides to move forward with constructing that in the future, it would look similar to the trail that's being built around the periphery of the city too, as far as the style. The consultant found that based on the context of our community, types of users, proximity to campus, the households that have 0 cars can benefit most from widened sidewalks versus separated bike lanes. So the consultants will be working on that behind the scenes over the next few months to get those cost estimations done, which as far as planning projects go, we typically don't do cost estimates as far as part of plans, but the Parking and Transportation Advisory Board felt like that would be a really good tangible outcome, so that if the city decided to move forward with any of those sections of widened sidewalks, there would be an actual number to work with. It wouldn't only be a planning document.
Did they, did they look at any of I think of Lynn Street and kind of the on-off sidewalk, the Swiss cheese? Did they look at any of those connectivity issues?
More broadly, yes.
Okay.
They're mentioned as, that'll be in the final report.
Okay.
But Lynn and Locust were not focused on as far as primary corridors that needed overall new infrastructure.
Okay.
But gaps, yes, that was definitely, that's one of the highlights. There's been several studies over the past couple of years, student reports, city studies, boards and commissions that have identified the gaps. And it's also a priority of the Parking and Transportation Advisory Board to have a policy for filling those as soon as possible.
Yeah. And speaking of consultants, there's been a lot of work behind the scenes related to zoning historic. But as last I talked to Mr. Moore, there wasn't anything monumental to report. So that is moving, but not at a stage.
There is a website for anyone who wants to see what's out there, oxfordudc.com. So oxfordudc.com for anyone who wants to look at that. So yes, Zachary Moore is working on that along with Jason and Ann.
All righty. And with that, we will go to the event of the hour. PC 2025-13 and 14, 5234 Hester Road. This is a preliminary subdivision and final plan development. New Roots Micro Home Community. Emily Lubbers is the applicant and agent, and we will gleefully accept a motion to adjourn to public hearing.
Motion to adjourn?
Mr. Kruth?
Second.
Mr. Bracken? So a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? All right, Mr. Perry.
All right, well, I don't get to do this very often. Mr. Zachary Moore has been ill over the past week, and so he did actually the majority of the work, and then I kind of got it across the finish line for the staff report, so I'm presenting tonight just because of that too. He's feeling better and getting back in the office, but not quite 100% yet. So we're excited to bring this before you tonight, if for no other reason other than because this property has been in front of boards and commissions many times over the past few years, but also because of this is also accomplishing city goals for housing diversity too. So I'll give you a little bit of a history and then get into the details of the project that was submitted by MSP Design. So 5234 Hester Road, and this is actually 3 in 1. So this is a subdivision and a preliminary and a final development. It's common for you to review a preliminary and final plan development together when it's a single-phase development, just to save on redundancy and time for review. And also, it's a subdivision because there would be lot lines between the homes. So in order to divide that, there needs to be a subdivision. And then for the final, that would go to city council. It would not come back through planning commission. So just a little bit of the procedural terminology. Overview on the screen there from applicant MSP Design, Emily Lubbers. And currently the city is the owner, for those of you that are familiar with the property. And I'll have a map showing that here in just a moment. It's been vacant for a few years. There was a home on it previously. And then the zoning was recently changed, R2A, single and two-family residential, which does allow planned developments for creative design. It's a 16-unit affordable, neuro-inclusive micro-home community. And there will be a new private street accessing the homes. So just a quick overview. And then, of course, the map showing the location there on Hester Road between the Somerville Bank, and it's now called the Sleep Inn. That's changed in the past few months. And the Habitat development to the north there, Fuller Way, Cotter Court, and then to the rear is the Dufour Lane and Honor Lane, the Northridge subdivision. So kind of giving a little bit of context. And the zoning, which is R1B to the north, general business to the south, and you can see the R2A in the center there. So it's kind of in a transitional area between the commercial there along College Corner Pike and the lower density residential in to the north. And then land use overview, which is single family, commercial, kind of a mixture of a lot of different things kind of around the area. Multifamily a little bit on College Corner Pike, and then College Corner Pike does have a mixture of some historical residential that's been converted to commercial. And then, of course, we have the Westgate Mall there to the south, and the hotel and bank that I mentioned earlier, and then some lower density single family to the east. And the reason we do this is because sometimes the land use and the zoning are not the same thing, so it's important to kind of see how the two can be different. Gives you an idea for things like future vision for the community, comprehensive plan, which is an even broader brush, showing how we want to see the area. Employment corridor was a newer land use that was put in the comprehensive plan to promote job creation and development in those areas. We've got some transitional suburban neighborhood was what this was identified as in the future vision for the community. It is a transitional area right on the edge too, so our belief is that development of that on an edge like this would be supported by the comprehensive plan, especially for the vision of the community to have a diversity of housing stock. It actually has kind of an overarching goal that could even be seen as even superseding some of the lower density vision for the larger area of suburban neighborhood. Aerial photo kind of gives you a little history of what it was before. We don't really have any records of anything else prior to this kind of lower density outlying area of the community where there was just a single home up near the front. The property does slope to the east downward, so that's probably why that's the way it was developed there along Hester Road. And then a more recent aerial showing where the home and garage have been removed and it's been vacant for a few years with no buildings on it at all. This is the proposal some of you may recall having reviewed or approved before from community development professionals. The city has owned this property for a few years and has been working to find a developer that could help fill the gap on housing diversity in the community, and community development professionals was the entity that had come forward previously, and this was the plan that had been approved, and this was for 12 prefabricated buildings actually, and kind of entering and exiting the property in a forward motion. Ultimately, this proposal did not move forward, and the city did issue a new request for proposals after this lease was terminated with community development professionals. And that resulted in a request for proposals. Then this was the selected entity, which you have before you tonight. So just kind of laying a little bit of history background for you. And this was an original design that was submitted, which is not in front of you, but it kind of gives you a little bit of idea on some of the dialogue that city staff, department reviewers had with the MSP about what would be the best way to design this site with the 16 units in mind that the city council and the developer had agreed to, while still trying to seek to meet as many of the codes in the plan development ordinance as possible, but still staying with the 16 units that was desired. And so if you looked at the proposal, you can see this is quite a bit different from the revision that's most recent, with a single street going down the center. And there's even a revision after this. So some of the things that caused this revision had to do with access for large vehicles such as fire trucks, trying to take advantage of the utilizing the most amount of open space and green space that could be possible in a meaningful way, but still accomplishing the safety goals that are in the code and really are requirements based on the type of equipment that the city has. So whether it's a garbage truck or a fire truck, there are large vehicles that need to go in and out of the site and be able to turn around and exit in forward motion just for safety reasons. But this design, we had some really good collaborative conversation with the design team, and which resulted in this, and we were pleased with how they were able to find a way to fit it all in there. These homes are a little bit larger than the prefabricated homes that CDP had in the previous design, but it does utilize the entire parcel instead of just the front part, so that allowed there to be 16 detached units. This is a recent rendering that actually we just got some recent revisions on it today, so this is very fresh, hot off the press, so you can kind of see how it's laid out with the detention basin and the open space are kind of in the center, which allows access for kind of a equal distance for the dwellings that are there. It almost meets the minimum parking of 32, although some of the residents may not need 2 or 1 even. But again, their goal was, and ours too, was to try to meet as many of the requirements as possible, while still filling that number of units in the property, and that was quite the challenge. So we've been impressed with how they've been able to do that. We call it a hammerhead turnaround. It's how it's referred to. Allows the large vehicles such as a fire truck to go all the way through the property and be able to turn around and exit in a forward motion just for safety reasons. So this accomplishes that and did meet the fire chief's turning template requirement, and that was demonstrated, so we appreciated that. There is also a community feature, a gazebo type of feature there in the open space. The project doesn't meet the 20% minimum open space. I believe it's 13% if some of the smaller pieces of land are included that are less than the 50 by 50. We have had waivers of the 20% on other projects, but again, this is a very narrow property, so that it's fairly limited on, in order to have that number of dwelling units and not have them attached as apartment buildings if they're going to be spread out. And that was something that we did talk with the design team about. Their response to potentially attaching the units and having more of a cluster type development and still having 16 was that would not work well with the type of clientele and the type of unit they want to be able to provide some space between units. So that's why the 20% open space could not be met with that number of units. Detention basin, you can see there, the site does slope to the east, and the drainage would go from the south to the north and then off to the north through an existing swale and into a detention basin that's off-site. There is quite a bit of fill that would be on this property, so a planned development and a subdivision both ask the planning commission and council to determine if the site is suitable. And so that's really a good discussion point, because the site has to be heavily altered in order to make the project happen. So if you decide to move this forward to city council, I want to make sure that you're aware that there will be a lot of alteration to this property as part of the construction phase. So just so that you know that going in. And with engineering and fill, it's possible to do those things. But for the surrounding community during the construction process and after it's complete, it would look very different from what it does today. Not just because of the clearing, but also because of the alteration to the grade. But if it meets the minimum requirements as far as access, stormwater, utilities, lighting, the city does not have any issues with that. We just want you to be aware of, it's not often that you would have a planned development that is this compact that would have that much alteration to the property. But that's one of the things that we're challenged with, is balancing of priorities within the community's vision. So moving on to the next slide, this just gives you an idea of how the individual lots, which would be owned by the buyers of the property. And one thing that I didn't highlight, that I'm sure the design team and the developer will highlight, but I do want to mention that the neuro-inclusive community is a very unique market sector that there's a major shortage of in Ohio. So that's one of the reasons why the city is excited about potentially helping make this project happen, because it meets a need that is not being met. In addition to meeting the need of that specific sector, it would also comply with housing affordability requirements and be open to potentially those that do not have developmental disabilities or family members. So this would be a very wide range of potential buyers of properties. There would be an HOA, so a homeowner association as well. So if you see on the screen, there's quite a bit of land that is not deeded to an individual property owner. So that's what the HOA would be required to own and maintain. The street would be a portion of that as well. Other projects that you've reviewed and recommended have had private streets that are owned and maintained by HOAs. That's becoming more and more common in recent years. We have a tree ordinance which requires a documentation of where there's wooded area and where there's development, that development is exempt from tree survey. The site, as I showed on a previous slide, is essentially going to be completely cleared, but one of the recommendations that I'm making is to exempt from the tree survey because there's so much clearing, but also to make attempt to protect any trees that are not intended to be removed during the construction process. It's common that trees that are not being removed, even if they're along a property line, can get damaged during the construction phase. So having some protection around those that are not intended to be removed, I think would be a good gesture in exchange for waiving the tree survey requirement. $61 trees, I believe is the number that is on the landscape plan. So one of the benefits of new development is getting good quality, healthy stock, new trees planted rather than trees that are volunteer that may come up and not survive based on the spacing. And so having trees that are planted in places that will thrive and survive because of the spacing in areas with topsoil is good for the community. So if you look at the community that's developed with subdivisions and even some of the historical parts of the community, you see a really good tree canopy in Oxford. And Oxford is known for being a tree city. And so even though we do have a lot of development, it's a fairly compact city, there is good tree cover. And so that is one of the benefits here that would come as a result of development. There would be, because one of the things that I'm recommending in the, as part of the waivers and conditions, as part of the tree survey waiver, would be to have staff have the ability to possibly move the placement or the species of the trees around a little bit because of the grade changes. One thing that we have noticed with recent developments is the screening and lighting impacts that, because this is an infill project within an existing developed area, sometimes that can be a common concern. And we don't know that until the project's farther along, and you can kind of get a better sense with the landscape of how there's going to be changes perceived by the surrounding property owners. And so if we had the ability to move some tree species around based on where best they can serve as buffering and potentially even mitigating from the changes in lighting for the area, that I believe would help with making this a good fit within the surrounding neighborhood. So there's a condition to that effect in the final recommendation. Setbacks is another challenge with this. Yes.
Sorry, can we go back to
Sure.
the tree? I was just gonna say, the latest mock-up though shows a, is that okay?
That's fine.
A significant tree buffer on the southern edge that isn't shown here.
I believe that's on the adjacent property, I believe.
Okay, so there are ones that would already,
Yeah, those are existing, and there's no plan to remove those. But
Okay.
since they're not on the property owner can't really rely on them as serving any kind of a buffer. A buffer is not actually required, it's the distance. And so because these setbacks are recommended to be waived, so I was getting to the second slide here, but along that southern edge, the request is to reduce it from 25 feet on this slide. Next slide shows 10 feet. So if that tree buffer stays, which as long as the hotel is there, no one has any plans to remove anything, that would kind of serve as helping expand that 10-foot buffer actually onto the other property, even though it's not their property. So I think what you're seeing, Mr. Bracken, is the existing vegetation that's off-site.
yeah, maybe the property line is in more than I'm seeing on this satellite photo and sort of what the edge shows in the other one, because it
Okay.
doesn't look like there's many trees.
Well, and it's also probably the time of year. The aerial photos are generally taken in leaf-off condition,
Mm-hmm.
so you're not able to see that canopy unless it's an evergreen tree.
Yeah.
Does that help?
Yeah, we can move
Okay.
on, thanks.
Sure. So setbacks. The setbacks, so the first slide shows the required setbacks, which a planned development has a 25-foot setback requirement. Nothing is allowed to be within that 25 feet. You can see that what Zachary has done here is overlaid that building footprints within the setbacks so you can get an idea of where those encroachments are, but also see on the next slide how the request is to actually reduce that. Now this line lines up with all the buildings, so you get an idea of what that reduction would be. So on the north and the east, it would be going from 25 to 20, and then on the south, it would be going from 25 to 10. But I think, as Mr. Bracken pointed out, with the existing vegetation that's along the south, at least in the short term, there's no plans for the adjacent property owner to remove that. And It's not a residential property to the south, so I think that's a common concern with an adjacent neighborhood where there's residential development that is near the property line or maybe has a backyard. This is a commercial parking lot to the south. And then the other part is an undeveloped portion of the Westgate Mall green space there where there's not any development. So those are all commercially zoned properties there. Comprehensive plan goals, this slide just has the housing goals that this has been a big part of the mission of the city in the past 5 years is to expand housing diversity. And we have been doing that through various efforts of recruiting development, rezoning, future land use plan. This is a big part of the community's vision and the adopted comprehensive plan from 2023. So expanding housing options for all life stages and ensuring housing affordability and attainability for all income levels. We're still just barely scratching the surface. We're losing it faster than we're gaining it, but we're trying to do our part and recruit developers to do the same. And we're also working on, as Mr. Watt mentioned, the rewriting of the zoning code as well, which we believe will help with allowing more diversity by removing some of the obstacles within the zoning code for process. Before I get into the recommendation, any questions so far? Okay. Reviewing all of the relevant design standards and decision standards, even though there are a lot of waivers here, we believe the city, this would support the city's goals in the comprehensive plan. The property was rezoned to help to make this project happen. Even though there would be a lot of alteration to the site, we have not had actually, except for one adjacent property owner to the north, just coming in asking questions about it. We've not had any written or walk-in or phone call concerns or questions at this point that we would want to bring to your attention. Just the one I think I was mentioned in the staff report. Conditions and waivers. So one slide is conditions, the second slide is waivers. These are in the staff report as well. 2-year time limit, and I'll tell you that this developer has no desire to wait anything close to that because there's funding that the city's made available to help make this project happen that's time limited, so their goal was to be under construction this year. But we still put that in there as just reciting what's already in the code. Same for the second condition, preliminary subdivision plat. There would need to be a final plat, which would not come back through planning commission, it would go directly to council before lots could be divided and sold. This is really the first condition that I wanted to highlight. The number of new trees planted shall meet or exceed the total of 61, or as shown on the landscape drawing. Adjustments to height, location, and species may be required by staff upon further design details of the grading and slope of the site perimeter. We don't have a grading plan at this point, but we still wanted to get this project on the agenda in front of you. When we get that grading plan, we'll have a better idea of the differential in elevations between the adjacent property owners, between the adjacent properties. And if any changes need to be made for the tree's viability or for buffering assistance because of the reduced setback, that would be a good time to do that. The fourth condition, this is a common issue that we have with the height of lights because of the newer LED technology. It can tend to be kind of a nuisance to adjacent property owners. It does save electricity, which is great, but we wanted to kind of reserve the right to work with the developer on if there's a need to have any shielding around those fixtures for specific homeowners that might be in the area. We want to be able to have the teeth to kind of do that. For example, we're having problems with the new hotel over by Millette Hall for this very reason, and it's a problem. So there's not been a request to have a taller light pole than 16 feet. You have granted those waivers in the past with some other projects. So they would have to follow the code, which is 16 feet. That is relatively short for a parking lot light, but in a residential area, it's appropriate. The last condition really just has to do with the homeowner association. Homeowner associations, if they're not well-funded and managed and administered, they can be problematic for communities because then the residents of a particular neighborhood, if they're not getting good maintenance, then they expect the community then to come to their rescue, and that would be the city of Oxford. So we want to avoid that up front by making sure there's a good, solid HOA that all the homeowners are paying into, and then that there's an administrator of that. We don't doubt that that will happen, but we just want to make sure that that's covered in the condition here. And then that would be required, those documents would be reviewed by the law director before the final plat would be allowed to be recorded to make sure that it's set up in a fashion that can be well-maintained. The last slide is waivers that I highlighted there earlier. First one has to do with the tree survey. And this is actually this is actually already in the code, but if there are trees that the developer finds that they can actually count toward their tree requirement, then there wouldn't need to be as many trees planted, but they would need to protect that tree. And so they haven't obviously gotten out there and discovered that yet, but that's something that we would allow. And so rather than mandate that 61 trees, if there's a way to preserve a tree along a property line that is accomplishing the same purpose, then we would do that in exchange for waiving the tree survey. The subdivision code, attachment H, has a pretty nice drawing on how to protect a tree, and so that would be what they would have to use for any that they want to count toward the tree requirement. And then the second one is a waiver for kind of the density of the development. Not the dwelling unit density, because that does comply with R2A. It's actually under the maximum density for dwelling units per acre. This has to do with the density of the development. So open space, lot coverage, and setbacks. And that's kind of a big deal to do that much waiving of development in a residential area. But because of the unique nature of the housing sector and the affordability that City Council had worked out with this developer, we felt like it made sense, but it needs to be connected. These waivers need to be connected to this developer and not some future development. So that would be specific to this development agreement that City Council approved in October of 2025. So we believe that is sufficient to accomplish the city goals. And the last one has to do with parking. Because it's 16 dwelling units, there's 32 spaces required. 3 of them have garages, so that counts toward the parking, but it's still short by 3. So it would be a waiver of 3 parking spaces. So that's all the conditions and waivers. And take any questions you might have. Of course, the design team is here too after I get done.
Is there on-street parking on Hester?
I believe there is on one side. Yeah, I don't think it's on both sides. It's a good question. I don't often see it parked. Can't tell from the aerial photo. I'd have to get back with you on that, but I can look it up.
Any other questions for Mr. Perry?
I will say in some aerial photos there's parking on both sides.
Okay, both sides.
So, I'm going to say perpetuity, so I said it. I always argue that we can say, oh, we'll do this for Bob, but not for Sue. So I think that's important. This is probably, there's no good spot for this, but on the conditions, and and this may be semantics, but in number 1 and 2, and I'm probably putting the cart in front of the horse, but is this standard wording, or could we expressly put that it's 6 months prior to expiration? Because technically 6 months within 6 months of expiration includes the 6 months after.
That was a reciting of the code wording. You could expand on it if you wanted.
Okay.
We just recited exactly how it was written in the code.
Okay. Also, I didn't see it in here, and again, I don't know if this is yours or the applicant. The types of trees, because we have a count, but with DBH, obviously, there's a whole formula, if you take out 10, you have to add 5 times 2 and stuff like that.
Yep.
Is there any, and again, this is a pretty thick packet, so it very well could be in there and I just missed it. Is there any reference to specific species, native? Because, technically I could plant 61 boxwoods and,
Right. Yeah, you wouldn't want 61 shade master locusts that have little wispy leaves that just blow away, right?
Yeah.
There's actually quite a few evergreens in there. So it's on page, for whatever reason, I don't have the page numbers on the packet, but there's a landscape sheet that shows the plant schedule. I don't have the species.
Yeah, it's like 10 pages in, maybe 15
I mean,
pages in.
the city has its own tree list, and in fact, it's being updated, I believe, as we speak. We should probably be implementing that in our tree ordinance code.
Okay.
So, redbud, crabapple, Japanese lilac, swamp white oak, and sour gum, pin oak, and then down at the bottom, the one that has the most, which I think is really beneficial for this infill project, is 13 Norway spruce, 11 white pine, and 13 green arborvitae. And so those are really key along that eastern edge, because that eastern edge is where there's such a big wooded area already. And so where that turnaround is would be all evergreen primarily.
Another question I had for you, from the engineering standpoint, I was reading the city engineers, and we've had this on other properties, and then you and I talked about the Wawa and Coleraine. When they alter it, obviously engineering will factor in adjacent properties. Has there been any, if they're elevating it, do we have final, I know you have final approval, but do we have any final idea of how far it's gonna raise it? And what kind of drop there'll be to the adjacent property?
Actually, the city engineer pointed that out in his comments
Yeah, I
as
saw
a
that.
concern that he had.
I just didn't see
agreeing
how
that-
much it was to level it out.
So it's about a 5-foot elevation change.
Okay.
So, one of the sheets actually shows the cross-section of what that slope would look like, there along that eastern property line. I didn't put it on the overhead, but it's, I see the page numbers now, 55.
What was the page number?
It's on the packet, it's 55, so like, if you turn it to the side, there's a little 55 right there in the middle, but it says,
Oh, that's, okay, there we go.
so if you look on the far right, it shows the drop-off. There's like an angled slope, cross-section, so you can kind of see where there's the little shoulder of the turnaround, and then there's a steep slope drop-off there. But it's prior to the property line. So, yeah, that's a big change for that area.
Okay.
But talking with the city engineer through Assistant City Manager Green, who's here tonight, he did not have any concerns with, he had concerns which we put in the staff report, She talked to him a little bit more, and he said that he was okay with the project. And there were solutions available to stabilize slopes.
Okay, yeah, because he had two reports, or two feedback, so, okay. That's all my ridiculous questions for you.
No, they're not ridiculous. No, I appreciate
I
it.
can come up with some. All right, any other questions for Mr. Perry? Ms. Webster?
Yeah, so I don't know if you can answer this, Sam, but I'm just curious if there has been discussion about how to ensure that this remains a neuro-inclusive community. Is that something that it would be managed by the HOA? Or, you know, how?
There's actually two entities involved, and the development agreement spells all of that out in detailed minutia. So as far as how long that has to last and how to ensure that,
But is it the developer that manages that process until it's fully, all the lots are sold? And then what happens?
I think I'll let them explain that.
There were extensive
Yeah.
discussions on the
Yes.
development agreement, and I think the applicant can explain that process
Okay.
to you.
Yep.
Any other questions for Mr. Perry? Looks like you're off the hook, sir.
For the moment.
For the moment.
And I'll have the remote if you want to
Okay.
go back and forth.
Hello.
Hi, how are you?
Not too bad.
I'm Gina Gamm. I'm with Inclusive Housing Resources. We are partnered with Empower Me Living. Emily behind me is our partner. Together, we're developing the site. And post-development, we'll be running the HOA unless it, you know, for the foreseeable future. So we, in the process of getting the site approved, the site plats approved, we have already submitted one version of the HOA agreement. And in it, it talks about the long-term affordability and use of that and how we will ensure that as the HOA manager. Does that help?
I believe you.
It was a very long document, but it's in there, and it's part of our development agreement too, and there are also, some elements of that are also in the, plat, what's the word I'm looking for? Restrictions. Lease restrictions, deed restrictions.
I was gonna ask if it was deed restriction.
Yeah, sorry.
All right, we'll have a myriad of questions, but if you have anything that you want to add to Mr. Perry's or anything you, like presentation or any key points?
I don't know that I mean, I'm sure that Emily Levers will, and her team will answer a lot of the design pieces.
Sure.
But just a little bit, I think this is the first time I've met some of you, so maybe just a little bit of introduction so you kind of know who we are on the development team and why we're here, you know, planning to do something like this. So Inclusive Housing Resources, we've been around in one form or another since 1992. We were formed because County Boards of Developmental Disabilities found that individuals with developmental disabilities, with their oftentimes intellectual disabilities and physical disabilities, really struggled to access housing that was affordable. So, because affordable, there's not enough of it, and the competition for that's pretty fierce. And, you know, accessible units just really aren't available in most communities. So they formed this. We have been managing it for quite a while. We have 131 sites across 3 counties, 181 units. We serve over 400 people in those dwelling units. Prior to being here, which I've been here for 9 years, I actually did affordable housing development. Some of that was homeownership, most of that was rental, but I have a long history in compliance with things like HUD regulations, making sure things meet the affordability, accessibility, and community standards that are so important for people to be able to access housing that really meets their needs. Emily, you wanna come up? I'll let Emily introduce Empower Me Living.
Great. Good evening. It's so nice to see all of you. Happy New Year. I'm Emily Kendall. I'm the co-founder of Empower Me Living, and we are partnered with Gina on this project. I have a background in commercial real estate and something that you all are very familiar with here in Oxford, student housing. But I have pivoted my career I also spent part of my career in commercial real estate on the retail side. But most importantly, I am a mom of a 6-year-old son with Down syndrome and a 3-year-old daughter that has cerebral palsy. So I happen to have a background in real estate and equity capital fundraising, and my husband is a commercial construction professional with over 20 years of experience building about $375 million worth of projects. So together we are leveraging our professional expertise to pursue our passion driven by our children to ensure that they have housing choices available to them that can last for a long time after we're gone. We're not the only family that faces this situation. Across our state, there are right now 77,000 adults with intellectual and or developmental disabilities that live with caregivers over the age of 60. So this is a crisis, it's a rolling crisis that's really imminent, and with the increased prevalence of autism spectrum disorder diagnoses that has gone from 1 in 2,000 40 years ago to 1 in 36 today, the demand for this type of housing is really, really, really high. And so we're proud to partner with Gina and with MSP, who have been great partners. And I will also say with Sam and his team and with Jessica and her team here at the city and city council, you've been wonderful to work with. We know that this is an innovative and different project, so it's been wonderful to have that embraced with open arms. And I have a letter from a friend of mine who is an Oxford resident and has a daughter with Down syndrome that she graciously wrote for me to share with you tonight. This is to the Oxford Zoning Commission about the New Roots Housing Project in Oxford. To whom it may concern, I'm writing to express my great enthusiasm for the New Roots Housing Project developed by Empower Me Living and Inclusive Housing Resources. My husband and I have been proud residents of Oxford for 16 years. Our daughter Louisa is now 13 years old and a proud student at Talawanda Middle School. When she was diagnosed with Down syndrome, one of my first concerns was how she might be able to live as independently as possible as an adult. The New Roots Housing Project has been designed to be accessible to residents who might need support with the daily responsibilities of independent living, while also providing an inclusive community and connections to the broader resources of Oxford. I can picture my daughter possibly living in one of these homes when she is an adult. One of the qualities that makes Oxford a wonderful place to live is its commitment to supporting a diverse community of residents. The New Roots Housing Plan would enhance that ongoing commitment. I strongly encourage the Oxford Zoning Commission to support Empower Me Living and Inclusive Housing Resources development and investment in our community. Sincerely, Pepper Stetler.
And the last thing that I would like to add is one of the things that we really feel is important, and I think you're hearing kind of peppered throughout all of our comments, is this inclusivity, this connection between neighbors that is really important to us here. People thrive when they have the support of their neighbors, and I don't care what your abilities or disabilities are. You always thrive better when your neighbors and you are close and it's collaborative. So you'll notice that a little bit in some of the design elements of the site. You'll see that a lot of the focus is more inward to the site and more like the doors face each other. The community spaces are mostly in between those because we're trying to foster that interaction and that community building even on such a small site. I mean, you're going to be pretty close to your neighbors. You need to be pretty close to your neighbors.
Any other questions for us?
What are the affordability thresholds that you're using?
So it will have a 80% threshold, but we are trying to deeply target a couple of categories, like 50% and maybe occasionally a 30% of income individual, just because we're trying to reach those who may not have a lot of income coming in, especially if they have a disability. So we do have some funding that we expect to come through that will subsidize some of those units for those who have particularly low incomes.
I think I'll add, just so you understand a little bit more about the picture and why we chose to pursue a home ownership model. Adults with developmental disabilities that rely on means-tested benefits, particularly Social Security, are very income restricted and cannot have more than $2,000 worth of assets to their name. If they own their own home, that asset is protected. And that's why this is an important model for us to advance, this idea of home ownership and showing people how this is possible for people with developmental disabilities as a protected long-term asset. And we're very grateful to the city of Oxford for supporting this project.
I do have a question or two. So, are there any special, and this will go into the HOA most likely, but are there any caveats or controls, or is this, if somebody owns the parcel, they own the parcel, and to Ms. Webster's point earlier, you know, I think we understand the initial property allocation, but in 15 years, if somebody decides to move, or, could you kind of walk us through that? Because the previous proposals, and actually some other ones in town, have to do with either transitional housing or different models, and I think that's a big concern of some of the folks or you know, people that I've heard from. So can you help us understand, is this like if Billy buys the house, like it's Billy's asset, and you know, like, are there any caveats that we should know about?
So the individual who purchases the site will have to be the person who income qualifies. So if Billy income qualifies, Billy buys the site, it's Billy's home. That being said, we are working closely with banks and other down payment assistant type programs. A lot of those have a minimum period where they have to stay or they forfeit those funds. Usually that's about 5 years. Now, the requirements to keep it affordable are much longer than that. So let's say that Billy's been there for 5 years and he does want to move and he goes to sell that during that affordability period, which is pretty long, he will have to sell that to an income qualified buyer.
Okay.
Now, granted, they qualify at the income for that, like if 80% of area median income today is $50,000, or 80, is that what I said? 80% of income is $50,000 today, but in 5 years it's 56,000. They'll have to meet the 56, not the 50. Does that make sense?
And outside of the HOA, there's no other inherent, like, I think of, it's most common with like retirement communities, there's caveats, and it's like, you don't really own the property. So outside of the HOA, the organization's really, it's just like a management company facilitation.
Correct. So we will act as an HOA. Our intent, though, is to provide maybe a little bit more services than your typical HOA would, just because we know who we hope to serve. So, you know, we have a lot of thoughts about how we keep the grounds, right? Or can we assist with capital improvements on the exterior of homes? So, you know, that is the direction we're leaning as an HOA, is to do more than a typical HOA, rather than just enforcing like lawn mowing, that kind of thing.
On that point, we spent some time discussing, correct me if I'm wrong, but one of the things that we've discussed, and I think is going to be implemented typically with an HOA, once you reach a critical threshold, then the true homeowners take over the operation of the HOA. This is going to be a little different because there will be representation on the HOA of, it could be service-based, it could be something else because of the nature of this development.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Webster?
Yeah, so not to get, you know, in the weeds, but just from your perspective as the creators of this project, more or less, what are the design aspects of the homes and the site that you feel are really critical to supporting the community that you're serving?
So we might be here for a while if I go on too long.
Yeah,
You're
no,
gonna
I'm
have to
just
like
trying
get
to
the
say
cane and
broad
pull me
brush,
off.
yeah.
But you'll notice that it's zero threshold entry, so that helps with mobility, accessibility. The way that the interiors, and Emily Lovers can talk a little bit about this, but the way the interiors are designed, it allows for the flexibility of creating things like accessible baths. and it comes to even like some things you wouldn't necessarily think of. For instance, the water runoff method, because individuals with autism are drawn to water, we have fencing around that area because we don't want someone to, if we have a crazy storm, which those seem to be happening more often, so maybe it's not so crazy, but if there's water there, we don't want someone to drown. You'll also notice that the units are pretty small, and in part that's, affordability and site concern, but also for certain individuals who have social aspects of their disability, having that smaller space is kind of comforting. They're also good for seniors or people who are maybe single or married couple where, you're just starting out and you want to start, with home ownership. It gives a way to transition into that. It also gives you a way to age in place. So, we kind of think about all of those pieces as we do the design work on the site.
Thank you.
All right, I think that's all the questions we have for you related to kind of the mechanics of it. Do you, is there a representative, do you have any questions about like green screen, any of that?
No, I think I'm okay with what I see.
Okay. It's funny, because normally, to Mr. Perry's point, when we're talking about green screen, it's to the benefit of the residents, and I was like, well, the hotel takes it out, I'm pretty sure they're gonna use that 10-foot space to plant some herbs. So, it's almost an inverse for us on this one. All right, I don't see any other questions, so thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. Yeah. Come on up.
Hi, so I'm Emily Levers. I'm the architect from MSP Design. We also have Jordan Weber, who is our civil engineer for the project. So you don't want me answering your fill and runoff questions. Those will be for him. But I just want to give you a little update on, or I guess background on this idea of the micro home. So we have been partnering with Empower Me Living and now Inclusive Housing Resources for a couple of years now on this idea of a micro home. So the idea is that we're creating affordability, not just in the small scope, but by the standardization of some of the components within the houses. So it's one of the things that we implemented to increase the affordability. So things like the cabinets and the layouts for bathrooms and stuff like that is more standardized than you would typically see in a true subdivision development. One of the other things that we have done is we are standardizing finish packages. So in a typical subdivision, a Dries, MI, whoever, you have all kinds of different materials and you can kind of pick and choose. So one of the things that we're doing is we're creating standards packages, which allows us to right size the price of those standard packages that allow the units to be affordable that way. So there will be 3 interior packages to choose from, 3 exterior packages to choose from. Similarly, in subdivision developments, you often have, you buy your lot and then you pick what house goes there. We have a very tight site and we have a lot of units that we're fitting on it. So instead of kind of letting each buyer pick a lot and then develop a house, we have created 4 standard housing types. So we have ranging from about 520 square feet to 940 square feet. So the smallest unit we have is a 1-bedroom, 1-bathroom unit. This is the one unit that is the least accessible of the units. So it's intentionally designed to be as small as possible and as affordable as possible. And then the next unit, we have a 1-bedroom with den. So 1-bedroom, 1-bathroom that has a den. A lot of folks with IDD often have caregivers that come in. Sorry, I say IDD, and individuals with intellectual and or developmental disabilities. So a lot of times there's a caregiver that comes in that will depend, sometimes is there potentially for an entire day. So we've created a den space that is a set down space for those caregivers. That unit also has an alternate that instead of a den, if they don't need it, it's an enlarged bathroom. So one of the things, so a little bit about my background to just pivot for a second is I do a lot of work with the IDD population, both on the housing side, also on the medical side. So I do a lot of healthcare design as well. And one of the biggest things that I have learned in my 10 years of doing this is the accessibility requirements are not enough. So when your turning radius is the new code 66 inches, that's barely big enough for a wheelchair to turn around. So if you have a, say, bathroom and you have it just barely big enough for that turning radius, you don't have room for a caregiver. You don't really have room to move around the wheelchair with a wheelchair. So one of the things that we really did was embrace both universal design and then also trauma-informed design, which is all about how buildings actually have the opportunity to heal and foster growth and development and healthy living, as opposed to they also have the potential, or if not designed well, they can be very harmful, especially with people with sensory processing issues, which a lot of people with IDD have. So every decision that is going into these micro homes is materiality, it's not just accessibility, it's durability, it's affordability, it's longevity. So you will see that a lot of these bathrooms are quite large. That is very intentional. With the exception of the 1 bedroom, 1 bath, every bedroom has the space for a bed and a full turning radius for a wheelchair. They are more open concept to allow the flexibility of if there's mobility concerns, if there's anything like that, they can really set up those spaces as needed. So talked about the first 2 units. So the second or the third unit is we have a 1 bedroom, 1 bath with a garage. And one thing to just kind of clarify a little bit. So for the parking, we did provide so 3 of the units have garages, which provide 3 spaces. Those units do also have driveways, so that's kind of where we're thinking we can make up those 3 spaces that we're missing, is that you could park in the driveways for those 3 units. And then the last unit type is a 2 bedroom. So if there's a buyer that has a caregiver that lives with them permanently, wants to live with a friend, a family member, etc., though there is a 2 bedroom, 1 bathroom option as well. And again, as Gina mentioned, 0 thresholds. We're considering everything from where's the floor drain in the shower. They're all curbless roll-in showers. Where are we putting the floor drain? How are we managing water? Even into light switches, making sure everything's accessible, door handles, so every type of thing that someone who is either aging in place or has a developmental disability, whether it's intellectual or physical, that this space is intentionally designed for them in a way that will allow them to thrive. Do you have any questions on the architectural side of things?
A quick question for the parking, I think it was maybe called out in the packet, is there are no handicap accessible spaces?
We do not currently have any shown. We are planning on incorporating them, and they would be included in the permit set when we submit for permit, which we are shooting again, we have funding deadlines that are in September. So, we're hoping to submit for permit in February and start construction in March. So we do have a very aggressive schedule. We have done in just a couple months, and that's a credit to the team that we've been working with at Oxford. We have done in approximately a month and a half what we typically take like 4 to 6 months to do. So again, a credit to that team and the collaborative nature and the going back and forth and all of the stuff that has happened over the last couple months as we've been working through this.
Can I ask some?
Yeah.
I'm just a little confused about the public space, the green space. It just feels to me in the plan that it, in one area, kind of looks like front lawns, and then it kind of turns into a more public space. So just talk about what your intent was for the green spaces.
Yeah, so our intent is that the front yards essentially become the community space. So the idea is that the front yards, We are a very tight site, so we're trying to get green space and also community space anywhere that we could. But it really goes back to what Gina mentioned in this idea of community. So we really did push the units as far to the property lines as acceptable, or that we felt comfortable doing in order to push that focus to the front yards. And the idea is that we're really using those front yards as the community space. So the idea is that it isn't necessarily like, this is my front yard, stay off of it. The idea is that it's a front yard that is encouraging community interaction.
So I would just say, you know, I totally understand how rushed and complicated this is, but that a little more design work be spent on that, because right now, it's just sort of unclear. Is it just a lot of grass? Like, how do you get people to share that space? And, you know, what the relationship is between the space right in front of the units and that kind of middle zone that gets bigger. It's just something I think could be developed.
So, the 3 units that have the garage are 1 bedroom, and you had pointed out the 2-bedroom option could be if they had a caregiver or, you know, a sibling or whatever. Just curious, and obviously it raises the square footage and size, but in my experience, most likely if a caregiver or somebody is live-in, they're gonna have a car, so that's more common that they would have a car. Is there an option, or was there any thought to the 2-bedroom, even though that brings everything up size-wise? Was there any consideration of the 2-bedroom having even a dedicated driveway or something of that nature?
We did talk about the potential for it to have a garage. You kind of hit on the main, is that it gets bigger, which makes it more expensive to build, which makes it harder to achieve affordability, is probably the one largest reason. Other than that, I mean, I don't know that it was something that we discussed and explicitly moved away from. We did intentionally try to locate the parking. So the 3 units that have the garages are kind of in that central, and then we did try to group the parking next to the remaining units. And there has also been conversations about potentially numbering the spaces, so like each unit would have, that doesn't have a garage, gets spaces.
Sorry, I don't mean to lurk.
No, you're good.
We provide housing for people with disabilities almost solely, and I will tell you that individuals who serve individuals with disabilities generally do not park in the driveways, usually because they end up getting parked in, and as they, you know, they don't usually live in, usually they're doing 8-hour shifts.
I was talking more
changing
about
over.
like family caregivers
Yeah.
or family members, because, you know, again, if somebody wants to live with a sibling, a cousin, a friend, whatever, statistically, they're more apt to have a car because they might be the one who, you know, works out of town or something of that nature.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely possible. I would say that my experience is usually, at least with the disabled population, that those that are caregiving for them are usually parking in a way that they can come and go with ease, and so they're usually parking on the street, even with family caregivers.
I was talking about people who live in the 2nd bedroom.
Oh, you're talking about roommate situations?
Yeah.
Yeah, well,
Yeah, just
sorry.
those,
I
yeah.
just wanted to make sure that that piece of the caregiving piece was kind of clear.
Yeah, it is, like I said, though we did briefly discuss when we were just setting the pro forma and the 4 different unit types, we did discuss one of the biggest issues, like I said, was the larger the house, the more expensive, the harder it is to achieve that affordability threshold. That doesn't mean we can't revisit that if necessary.
Well, and hypothetically, you could
Yeah.
have 2 incomes, so that would also change the
Yeah.
economics there, so. Also, you had started to talk about like numbering spots. One thing, just for the greater good of the 3 people watching on YouTube, most of the time when we have shared parking, there's not individual parcels. So it's more of the common, it's more of like an apartment concept, or it's a PUD where it's, hey, we all live here and we share, whereas, you know, we were talking, there's allocated spots or allocated parcels. there's gonna be such flux between whether people have a car, use a car, want a car. Is there any data on the number of spots? I know what our code says, but also, I think, you know, and I get the vibe from Mr. Bracken, even though he was politely quiet about it. The lot coverage compared to the original proposal in 23, and the green space and things, if you recall one of Mr. Perry's first slides, the back 2/3, the grade was completely left alone originally, so that was one of the things that stood out to me on lot coverage. Has there been discussion with the city or any thought to like, yeah, I know mathematically it says 32, and obviously you have the bonus spots with driveways and garages, but I also, you know, I want to make sure we have adequate parking for caregivers, visitors, residents, but I also don't want to give up green space, because a parking spot's what, 10 by 20? So, you know, even 2 less parking spots, I mean, you can throw a nice big oak tree in there. Has there been discussion on those? Like, do you have data on like usage or?
Not concrete data on usage like for this population in an independent housing situation, just because it's something that doesn't exist currently. Like, this is really a first of its kind. I do know when we were discussing and going back and forth with Oxford and Sam and his team, that we did very intentionally try to keep it as close to, like, we didn't go way over, and it was a very intentional trying to get as close to the exact number as possible. But I don't know, Emily, do you have any? I don't know if you might have.
I can just say that I don't have exact numbers, but, we've toured and looked at and studied other IDD housing communities across the country that are more apartments, and that's been obviously a little different, but they have all, and I'd say 90% of cases, been able to get reduced parking requirements because of the nature of their residents. Not all of them drive.
Well, I was actually proposing less parking spots.
Less parking spots.
Oh,
No, I wasn't saying you needed the 32. What I was saying, so you went to Miami, the big parking lots we have in town that are never used. I can think of mostly in commercial and retail spaces, but I think that our commission, especially our former member, Dr. Brithridge, I think we're less concerned with parking minimums and practicality. So that's, again, I'm not talking like, go with 10 spots, they'll figure it out. What I'm saying is, with the limited green space and common space, I just didn't know if there was anything, because again, to your point, there's contracts for disability services with BCRTA and things of that nature, so having parking spots, if we have data that says, certain demographics, groups, individuals, the target audience is gonna most likely, if the average American had 1-for-1 on a car, but the folks who are gonna live here are like 0.7, I think that's something we'd also be open to looking at.
We can do some more research on that, and if the commission's open to.
Just want us to build in
that,
latitude?
Then maybe we can
Okay.
do administrative changes.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with that. I'd rather have green space than parking
and
space.
something else to point out, going back to the ADA, is the ADA does take up the additional space with striping. So, one of the things is, as we're adding ADA spaces, instead of removing green space, maybe we keep it within the original. We do end up losing some spaces in order to accommodate that ADA.
Yeah, because it'd be a 2
spaces.
for 3 in the same footprint, so.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, any other questions?
Just one question in terms of the site planning. I'm looking at the house that's to the west of the detention basin. I'm just curious, because and then to the west of that building, there's another kind of open space. I'm just curious, kind of the decision making there of like, is there value in potentially shifting that house one parcel to the west and then thinking about kind of a larger space near the detention basin?
So that was intentional. So, like Gina mentioned, folks with IDD have a tendency to be drawn to water, and there is a high, there's a chance of drowning with access to water. So we wanted to actually kind of keep the detention, and it will also be fenced off, is we want to keep the detention as a separate, like, the goal is that it's not necessarily becomes a community feature in any way or is incorporated in one, because we don't want someone to accidentally wander into water and drown.
I think I see Mr. Cruz's point that there's two houses right next to it.
The driving force behind that was to keep the driveway 20 foot long.
Oh, I get what you're saying, yeah.
And then if we
So you
move-
have a space.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Oh, that makes sense.
If we move that
It-
to the next space, we couldn't keep the 20 foot long driveway. And then-
Even you could move potentially the parcel line, maybe, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty tight, and with a 20 foot setback, maybe there's potential we can flip the whole house footprint, kind of mirror.
Actually, you brought up something interesting on parcels 11 and 10 and 11. If you were to photo negative 10 and have the driveways closer together, that would also create a little more, there's less break points. I know it's not a through street, but at the same time also, I could see, to Ms. Webster's point, the green space, that kind of continuity would help. And not have them touch, because the giant driveways are goofy. But even some of those small, and I trust Mr. Perry and his team, lucky them, they know how we think.
I'm curious, from the stormwater perspective, to this point of the detention basin and it potentially being a danger, things like bioswales, in terms of capacity, I'm not sure how much you'd be dealing with, but trying to think of how necessary is the detention basin, or are there other ways to capture water on the site potentially?
I mean, detention basin is the simplest way to handle stormwater. I mean, we can, first just kind of have a lawn that's a big hole. We can include like wildflower mix. We can make it a little more aesthetically pleasing. Bioswales, you kind of have to get into the soil types if it's going to percolate to the ground more. It's
But you're also bringing in a lot of dirt though, right?
yes, we are.
Just a thought in terms of thinking about.
It's always fun to listen to an engineer and an architect talk.
I mean, would the concern be the aesthetics of it, or?
Well, to the point of, I think, I'm always hesitant around these detention basins that have the fence around them, just because they are aesthetic, and I understand completely 100% why you would, want it if it's a danger. And so to me, if it's a danger, are there other ways of maybe handling some of the stormwater runoff? Even thinking about some of the planting plans, if there are ways to kind of cluster trees in ways that might help with the stormwater runoff.
Yeah, I mean, we can, the fence around the pond is the unsightly, but I think we can probably kind of spice it up with some landscaping, kind of hide it a bit.
Well, and also to your point, if there was some kind of, I just think of, solid concrete parking versus, brick parking.
Permeable, yeah.
Permeable. That, because even if it was just to take the edge off and bring the fence back off that sidewalk, and then there's space, you know what I mean? I see what you're saying, is if there was an ecological solution towards the back of the property, and you could back the fence up, and then you could put my boxwoods, you could put those there, that would help both aesthetically and safety.
I mean, we can definitely work with the city
Yeah.
engineer to make sure we hit the
Yeah,
stormwater regulations, but also, that's obviously the driving force on the basin is hitting that stormwater stuff, so.
Yeah.
That was also, I would say, probably the concern that we've been told was one of the largest concerns of the adjacent neighbors, is the water runoff. So we did want to be very careful and make sure that we are not only not negatively impacting, but, if we have the potential to positively impact the adjacent sites, that was something that we kind of from the beginning knew was a concern of the residents and surrounding, and that we wanted to make sure that we were addressing appropriately.
This is very weird in particular. Should be 7, the unit 7. To Mr. Cruz's point, you're bringing in a lot of dirt, and the grade slopes towards the east. Is there a possibility, and I'm sure you guys have looked at this, of moving the entire fenced-in detention area back by the hammerhead, so that it is kind of in the back, and because from a safety standpoint, it takes it out of the central area. It also, one could imagine you'd have less dirt to bring in because it'd be in a natural basin. And then, you could shift, obviously you could move 6 to the drainage and 7 to 6, or, just move 7 into wherever. But then that keeps everything towards the back of the property, I would imagine. Like, think of, my college stadium was built in a bowl, a lot less earth moving. But that, I think, would also, I'm mostly concerned with safety, but aesthetics obviously are right there, but it also kind of tucks it in the back corner. It's very similar to like Owl's Landing. The natural grade was in the front, off to the corner, and then the other spot was in the back, so.
I mean, there's potential once I develop a more kind of detailed grading plan, but where I have a place now, that's right at the lowest spot of the site. So it's kind of makes the most sense to put it right there in front of the lowest spot of the site.
Oh, so it's not a complete drop, it's kind of a,
Yeah, it's,
Okay.
it's where, plan's not up.
Page
yeah.
55 has that.
Yeah, it
That's what I was
shows,
gonna
goes
say.
down and up
Goes down
again.
and then back up,
okay.
yeah.
Yeah, where the pond is and that property line behind it, that is the lowest spot in the site. That's where everything drains now
Yeah.
to the existing swale.
Oh, okay.
So it's,
It's hard to find.
In my defense, I'm farsighted.
I see, okay.
Okay.
for reference, I mean, the swale starts at elevation 957, and the east side is, the high spot is 960. So, not much, but it's still the lowest spot
Sure.
on the site.
Sure. And council will see this, so I'm sure, a couple people, again, just trying to think of how to kill a couple birds with one stone.
Sure. Just to speak on the amount of fill, that is strictly based on getting sanitary to gravity flow. As unfortunately, our connection point in the Hester is shallow, so that's our pinch point for that.
Okay. I think that's all the ridiculous questions I can come up with. You got anything? All right. Thank you very much. I'll accept a motion. Oh, wait, nope.
Public.
Yeah, I was gonna do that and then go to public, and I was like, why would I adjourn from public and then go to public? We haven't had a meeting since November.
You're doing great.
All right, at this point, we will entertain public comment. Each person will have up to 3 minutes, so if you would be kind enough to come up, introduce yourself, and as soon as you are done with the demographic identification, I'll hit the button on the clock.
Okay, do you want to wait for your papers to get,
Sure.
everybody's got their own,
Here, you get multiple copies.
I didn't know, Sam, if you want to give Sam one, that's fine too. Are you, okay, I'm ready if you're ready.
All right, perfect.
Okay, so my name is Teresa Watts, and I live at 6141 Hester. So, I love the concept of what everybody's trying to do here, but every single person has talked about pushing things to the limit, and nobody has said anything about reducing the amount of units that could be there and making things better for the homeowners, the neighbors, because right now Hester has a problem with passing by each other, because there is parking on both sides. And I just was listening to you talk about taking away parking spaces. Then if you have visitors, mom and dad, somebody comes to see them, then it puts everybody to the street to park. If you reduce the amount of parking spaces. But with 16 units being in there, you have potentially 16 cars, 32 cars. And so that is a lot of traffic to come in and out of that area, which is a big safety concern.
see, I made some notes here. And I heard Sam, I got here a little late, so I'm sorry if I ask questions that you've already addressed, but when it came in, I had heard that you said that it was gonna be heavily altered, and like all the trees were gonna be taken down, which would, and being graded, an entire lot was gonna be emptied and then brought in dirt to grade it. Well, where we live, we own right next to the retention pond that's there now on, it's DeFore or Jacob, one of those two streets that ends. And right now, we have, when it rains especially, we have swales of water that comes down through there. So, changing the grade of things is concerning to us, because it's going to change, down the road, and we're the last stop before that retention pond. And right now, we're already fighting with so much water and garbage that's coming across there, from other storm drains that are draining in, so we're facing, a big issue there. So this would just is a increase in, what I think would be a bigger problem for us as an adjacent homeowner. So that was very concerning to me. And then, I was listening to, all the waivers and rezonings and everything, and that was kind of concerning because is that going to set a precedence for Oxford to do this somewhere else? So that was kind of a concern that I had. You're trying to put, as my note says, you're trying to put 7.6 units per acre, buildings on 1 acre. That's a lot of housing, that's a lot of people, it's a lot of flushing toilets and lights in the parking, and it's just a lot of things going on, and that's a congested area right there. People coming in and out of the hotel, neighbors, just, trying to pass by somebody now is hard, at times.
About 15 seconds.
15 seconds, okay. So I guess, and one of the other things that I listened and I did heard, and I do love your idea, so I'm not putting that down, I'm just concerned as a neighbor. But I'm worried about, you were talking about Billy buying a unit. What happens if Billy wants to decide he wants to rent out his unit, but he wants to keep it in his name? And then we start changing, the demographics and things. So I was just a little concerned, and maybe these folks might have some answers for me after the meeting. But I just had a lot of questions about why we're putting so many units on such a small spot. You're reducing that, I think, would be great. Or as in my note was, if you want to put the 32 units, you would find another location that maybe the city owns, and then put something else there that would be a little less. I'm losing my word because I know I'm out of time.
Thank you very much.
All right, you'll finish for me, okay?
Hi there, I'm Terry Hughes, that's my wife. So,
Blame me.
we own the property behind Hester and Jacobs, and the rain runoff and the storm drains, it does get us pretty well. I pick up trash, every time there's a big storm, I just go out with a trash bag and do my thing, except where it's heading in the woods. So that concerns us, grading and all that. I'll just say, I agree with Teresa, we love the idea of the concept. The IDD individuals will have 4 of the residents. Where do the other 12 go? Who has those? And once they do reach their criteria of ownership before they can sell, who do they sell it to? Who do they rent it to? We already have in our minds that our area of the world on Hester is centralized poverty in Oxford, and we feel like it's kind of intentional. When Oxford has so many other places they can build, we know what Oxford City owns, and it's concerning to us that it's intentional. We think it is. The other thing is, this seems a little rushed to me. I've listened to all your questions and all their planning, and it just seems like this is something that's important to a lot of people. So take a step back, have some alternative thoughts, and go forward from there. You know, parking, I do think is an issue. Green area is an issue, and there are other folks, though they haven't come forward yet, Sam. We've talked to them because they're our neighbors, and they have questions too, but this all's come on like through the holiday season, and people are busy doing other things. So that being said, I think you're putting too much into one small area. It's like having a bunch of chairs in a dining room. If you put too much in there, it's just not gonna work. You gotta figure out how to make it work and go from there. That's just our opinion. So thanks for hearing me. Appreciate it. You guys are doing good work.
Thank you.
Bring up your questions.
Ms. Green, if you would identify yourself for the record.
Yes, good evening, members of the Planning Commission. I'm Jessica Green. I'm the Assistant City Manager with the City of Oxford. And I just wanted to give comment this evening. You know, working for the city and working for City Council, we've been working toward affordable, inclusive, diverse housing for a number of years. You see it in our comprehensive plan, you see it in our actions, and I'm really proud to be bringing this project forward to you today in partnership with Inclusive Housing Resources, Empower Me Living, and Sam's entire department. It is a project that we are trying to get across the finish line because we are trying to use some ARPA funds, and there are extreme deadlines with that. And so that is a unfortunate reality. Yay for the money, boo for the deadlines, but we're gonna do our best to try to make it happen. So Inclusive Housing Resources and Empower Me Living are the respondent of a request for proposals that the city put out. They were the winner of, they were the top scoring out of 4 proposals. In May, council accepted our recommendation to work with them, and they wanted us to work on a development agreement. And by golly, did we work on a development agreement. It took us 6 months, but I think every detail, I mean, I don't think we didn't cross a T or dot an I. For example, these units cannot be rented. There's an affordability period of 20 years. We talked about that HOA and all the roles and responsibilities of that HOA, who's going to care for the property, who's going to make sure the affordability is addressed, who's going to make sure the tenants are correct, who's going to make sure they're supportive, et cetera, and so on and so on. So we entered into that development agreement in October, and since then, we have been actively working with them to get it to you today. They have had neighborhood meetings. They've gone out and passed flyers. They've really been proactive with people, trying to explain what their vision and their goal is. That's kudos to them for doing that. They've met with staff and have been very responsive to our feedback. And so I'm just very impressed with their creativity, intention, but also responsiveness to concerns and intention. The city does intend to try to use ARPA funds to support this project, and there is a September 30th deadline for infrastructure cost, which is why we're on the deadline that we are. So happy to answer any other questions. Gina can answer a lot of, and Emily can answer a lot of the housing questions, but I can answer maybe some of the city questions if there are any. So, thank you.
All right, thank you. Is there anyone else from the public? We've run out of people, unless, all right, I don't see any more public who would like to speak, so I'll entertain a motion to adjourn from public hearing. Anyone?
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Bracken, Vice Chair Rosenberg, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? Seeing none, we are out of public hearing, but we reserve the right to pick on staff. All right.
I think this is a great project. I've been through several iterations of seeing different projects come and go that didn't end up happening. I can understand some concerns that neighbors might have, but the facts are that there is this hotel right to the south. There's already some density there. I wish there wasn't a perception that the city is trying to push poverty to this neighborhood. There are other areas in town where affordable housing is also being developed. So I'm just really positive about this, and knowing also what I know about what is to the east quite deeply, I think that there is definitely room for that water to go to, and I'm just really glad to see that this is in front of us.
I'm super excited. This seems great. And I'm ready to move forward. I could say more, but you covered a lot.
You get to vote again, so.
It's true.
Any questions, comments, concerns, thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's kind of a lovely confluence of, you know, the intentions of Oxford and this group that you guys have been able to work together, and it seems really consistent with our master plan vision, so I support the project.
Yeah, I think it's a really ambitious project and hits so many kind of great notes that are in the comprehensive plan, and it is a great need in the community in general to have this kind of housing and across the state, even I think hearing some of those statistics. You know, I think there are concerns, I think, around the engineering and around the stormwater runoff, and I think those are valid. I do note, you know, that the city engineer has noted their kind of desire to kind of work things through. So my hope would be that even, you know, those conditions could be improved and be friendly to neighbors, and to make sure that those concerns are addressed in the modeling of that stormwater runoff and with parking and such. But in general, I think this is a great thing to have for the community.
Discretion of the chair, Mr. Perry, because this is individual parcels versus, you know, like an apartment complex, I don't recall seeing anything about trash.
We do have, there is actually the slide with the color rendering. If I could get the slides back up, that shows little pads for individual waste wheelers. So instead of a single dumpster, what we've worked out with the design team, I don't even think you'll be able to see it on here, but there's these little tiny ears on the side of the building. Those are it's just a little tiny pad for a single waste wheeler and a little screen wall.
So on the houses on the south side, let's just say non-driveway,
Yeah.
those pads wouldn't, well.
So
okay.
they would drag their tote out to the edge of the drive on trash day and then drag it back.
For example, those right there, the pad is in the grass.
Right. Well, it would have a little concrete pad by itself,
Yeah.
but there would be no
They'd
no
have
connection
to drag
to
it
it.
through the grass
Yep.
or the snow.
Yep.
It's on page 9 of the staff report.
There we go.
Yeah, and you know, these don't have
I was
garages.
looking for the word trash, that's why I missed it. It was garbage. Again, that's more for the HOA and the residents, but just having worked with individuals with disabilities and, you know, again, if, you know, it's not targeted to a set diagnosis, so there might be individuals even the most able-bodied person, good luck dragging a Rumpke through a foot of snow. So I do have a concern about that. And again, I don't necessarily want the person in Unit 4 to have a trash bin on their porch. And then mailboxes.
What's in there?
That's on the same area.
Is it, no, I wanted to make sure that, so that's part of parcel 17, correct? Because that one doesn't
Correct.
have, okay.
It's a group, man.
Yeah, I just can't see it on that one. Yeah, they're all gonna be group clusters, unfortunately.
We can work with the design team on the garbage a
Okay.
little bit more and see if there's any improvement for just the practicality of dragging the containers back and forth.
It just occurred to me, I was more concerned with the mailbox being on the shared area. Being right there, yeah, the postal person can pull into that spot if it's open, but people coming around the corner, that's a safety issue.
It's a pretty low, yes, I agree. It's also a pretty low volume private street.
It only takes one car.
It's correct.
those are my biggest concerns, because I think with kind of the smash of concepts, we don't normally deal with individual refuse in a planned unit development. I mean, it's normally, you know, and again, I'm thinking also of the commercial, you know, like an apartment complex falls in, you know, the same as a restaurant. So it's hide this, screen this. So, yeah, I would really like that worked on.
The residential plan developments that you have recently approved in the past 5 years have all had garages. So I think
Yeah.
that's where you're coming from there. This
Yep.
is maybe a little bit different where there's not garages, so
Yeah,
It's
because
gonna be up to them.
those three and then the two that are bucked right up to the sidewalk don't have a problem. I'm just more concerned with the ones on the south. And funny enough, even the one in the corner, I mean, they could put theirs in the Hammerhead hypothetically. Not sure the HOA would like it, but let's be real. Yeah, if you guys could work on that, because again, I think it leads to a problem that is definitely not in the purview of our commission, but I also know quality of life, things of that nature. You know, I know that care of property is always a concern, and especially, again, I just imagine somebody, you know, we have turning radiuses in the bathroom for a reason. So if there's an individual in a chair or something of that nature, I just think we're compounding a problem that we already know about. So,
yeah, it's good feedback. Thank you. We can
Okay.
talk with them more about that and do some, we'll be doing research on that and parking demand for similarly situated developments.
okay. The only thing I would ask is if and as one of you fine folks makes a motion to do whatever you so see fit, and I trust you to clarify the language on prior to, just because, the expirations. Because again, anyone with a really good lawyer could argue that, you know, it expires in June. Well, August is within 6 months of June? Because we don't specify the direction. Maybe we should call our friends in Columbus and let them know their code's awesome. But yeah, in number 1 and number 2, if we could explicitly put that in there. I know this will be built way ahead of time, but measure twice, cut once.
Sure.
So that's my 43-cent contribution. And any other questions, comments, concerns? Good recipes? All right. The only things that get us out of this is motion to table or motion to do up or down. So I think Mr. Perry has more than captured my wish list on the prior to and stuff. So I'll trust our colleagues to capture that.
Motion to approve.
Mr. Bracken with the motion to approve. Do I have a second?
Second, with the recommendations of staff.
Vice Chair.
Including the waivers and conditions.
With the waivers and conditions as suggested by staff.
Agreed.
Point of order, because it's been a while, there are 14 design standards. As we have done it, just a reminder, unless anybody has any questions, comments, or concerns, it's been a common that we agree that if otherwise, unless otherwise noted, we all agree with the staff assertions and no problems with the 14 conditions. So just being a new year, I wanted to make sure, because I know we're in that habit, but I don't know if all.
You're agreeing with the staff findings that have already.
We're not going over 14 of them for the fun of it.
Yeah.
So,
You're agreeing to adopt the staff findings, and.
including the 14.
The recommendation with waivers and conditions.
Being a new year, I
That's what
want to
I
make
heard-
sure it's
That's what I heard
documented.
Jason say.
I just wanted to make sure it was documented. We're in a new year. Let's just cover it once every 12 months so that everyone knows
I
how
will
we
confirm
function.
those were all my intentions.
Well, so somebody who doesn't watch doesn't realize that's kind of our nomenclature. So, all right. Call the roll, sir.
Sure. Start with Mr. Kruth,
Yes.
Ms. Webster,
Yes.
Ms. Rosenberg,
Yes.
Mr. Bracken,
Yes.
Mr. Watt.
Yes. All right, the motion passes, and I think we have given enough homework to everybody. All right, the only thing left on the agenda is my favorite word in the world, so I'll accept a motion.
Move to adjourn.
Vice Chair with the motion,
Second.
Mr. Bracken with the second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Look at that. Shade under 2 hours. It's like we know what we're doing. And for those of you watching, that's a joke. 4 hour meetings. Katie Parigi used to text me after meetings and be like, hey, guys. I'm like, that's why I said 3 or 4 people. Who is? Happy birthday, Trouble.
Oh, thank you.
It's your birthday. It is.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
What?
Congratulations.
On being
Happy
53.
birthday. On making it this far.
I'm making it this one.
In this world,
Once a year, I get
these
it done.
conditions currently. You doing all right? We need to catch up.
Yeah, we do. I'll text you.